You never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Hi there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, the Rwanda plan is back in the Commons again. Ugh, are you bored of this yet? We'll be bringing you up to speed on all of it. Will it ever actually get anywhere? Your thoughts on that. Also, Margaret Thatcher has been labelled as a contemporary villain in a museum exhibition alongside folk like Osama bin Laden and Adolf Hitler. Really? I mean, come on now. Some people, by the way, have called for the removal of the funding from that museum, but isn't that a stretch too far as well? Your thoughts on that? Also, LTN's low traffic neighbourhoods government guidance says councils need to get approval now when they want to launch these things. Do you have one in your area? And do you back it? Also, get this, the owner of Scottish Widows has issued new staff guidance to avoid, among others, the word widow, because it may be triggering. I just need to press pause on the stupidity of all of this for a moment, and I want to instead focus on what makes companies act this way, their ESG strategies. Do you even know what that is? It's where they desperately try and tick boxes around things like environment and diversity. Is all of this much needed and a force for good? Or not. And the lengths that stores are now going to try and stop shoplifting are absolutely eye-watering. But will any of it make a blind bit of difference, or has the ship already sailed? Indeed, so we're going to get stuck into all of that across the next hour. But before we do, let's cross live for tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, our top story tonight, the government has started to identify, it says, which illegal migrants will be on the first flights to Rwanda. Downing Street says the initial cohort of people is now being contacted, with the Prime Minister still determined, he says, to see the first plane leaving later this spring. And MPs are due to vote this evening on 10 separate changes to the Rwanda bill, suggested by peers from the House of Lords. Rishi Sunak saying he is committed, though, to getting flights off the ground.
It's important that we get the Rwanda scheme up and running because we need to have a deterrent. We need to make it clear that if you come here illegally, you won't be able to stay and we will be able to remove you. That is the only way to properly solve the issue of illegal migration. Now, we've made good progress. Boat numbers were down by a third last year, so that shows that our plan is working. But in order to finish the job, we need the Rwanda scheme through. We're getting it through Parliament. Everyone is trying to block us, including the Labour Party, because they don't have a plan to tackle this problem. We do. I'm determined to see it through, get the deterrent up and running as quickly as possible.
Well, in response, the Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper told us at GB News the government does need to get a grip on the situation.
We need to strengthen our border security and fix the chaos in the asylum system, because under the Conservatives we've really seen criminal gangs take hold along the channel, and then this huge soaring backlog with asylum hotel use that is costing the taxpayer billions. So instead of all the gimmicks that we've had from Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives, our plan is to get a grip. That starts with the new cross-border police to go after the criminal gangs, to smash the gang networks and prevent boats arriving on the French coast in the first place.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has been announcing plans today to create 20,000 new apprenticeships on a visit to Coventry in the West Midlands. He was pledging £60 million worth of new investment, in fact, to cover a series of reforms, including fully funded training for young people and a reduction in red tape for small businesses. Labour has accused the government of economic failure, but Mr Sunak says action is being taken and the full cost of apprenticeships will be offered to applicants aged under 21 at small firms from the 1st of April. Small business owners seem to have welcomed the move.
I think the apprenticeship payment in full would be fantastic. We've had an apprentice before. She did phenomenally well, but funds have been quite tight the last couple of years, and that's not something that I've been able to enter into again, although I want to. So that is a benefit.
I think there's lots of positives in there. I think there's some great stuff for helping small businesses. For our business, we need a bit more.
The small businesses in the UK will see it as to what it is. It's probably a last-ditch effort to get some confidence back. I don't think he's done enough. I don't think it's going to give the confidence to small businesses.
Well, the Prime Minister has also been busy today rebuffing the speculation about a leadership challenge, saying he isn't interested in the politics of Westminster. He said to his party they should stick to the plan. He told backbenchers the economy was turning a corner, but he was forced to speak out after rumours suggested right-wing Tories were lining up Penny Mordaunt to replace him. Well, the former US President Barack Obama has been in Downing Street today for private talks with the Prime Minister in what's been described as a courtesy visit. Mr Obama served 2 terms in the White House from 2009 to 2017. A Whitehall source has told us at GB News President Obama was there for an informal meeting and they discussed the work of the Obama Foundation. The former president was in Downing Street for about an hour. Now, the former Environment Minister, Zach Goldsmith, has been banned from driving for a year. It's after he was caught breaking the speed limit 7 separate times driving in London between April and November last year. Conservative peer was also caught speeding on 2 motorways, most recently in December, in his hybrid electric car. He pleaded guilty to all the offences and was fined £5,500, as well as being ordered to pay a surcharge of £2,000 plus costs. Now, 9 police officers have been recognised for their incredible bravery, risking their lives to rescue residents from a mobile home fire in Windsor, in Berkshire. Take a look.
Get back! Move back from it now! Move back! Move that way! Move that way!
If you're listening on radio, that's the sound of Thames Valley Police. They've released body cam footage of the incident at that caravan park in 2021, where emergency crews had been called in to respond to an explosion after several mobile homes were catching alight. One of the policemen who took part in the rescue said it was the first time he'd had chance to look back at the video and properly reflect on just how close he and his colleagues came to harming themselves or even to death. He said the selfless act was actually driven by pure instinct. And finally, Britain's most successful female Olympian, Dame Laura Kenny, has announced her retirement from professional cycling. The athlete posted the news on her Instagram page, saying it was time to move on. The 5-time gold medalist had been expected to compete at the Paris Games this summer. The 31-year-old welcomed her second son last year and said spending time at home with him and her family was proving more important to her at the moment. For the very latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside with the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and the broadcast journalist, Judita De Silva. Good evening to both of you. You know the drill on this programme, don't you? It's not just about us three, it's about you guys at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with me all the usual ways. gbviews@gbnews.com is my email, or you can tweet or X me at gbnews. But first up, I mean, I long for the day, right, where I never need to mention this ever again, because it's all done and dusted one way or another. But tonight is not that day, because of course I'm speaking of the Rwanda bill. It's been back and forth like I don't know what, and now it's back in the Commons, being voted on pretty much now as we speak. I'll cross live to Westminster, where our political editor Christopher Hope can bring us up to speed. Good evening, Christopher. Please tell us all what's going on tonight on this one, please.
Hi, Michelle. Evening, and great to be on your show. Yeah, the votes have been delayed till 8 o'clock. We had led to believe they were at 6 p.m, but they've been delayed till 8 o'clock, so they won't come on your show. But there are 10 attempts by the House of Lords to water down, or they would say improve, the Rwanda bill. 10 measures passed by peers, which MPs here tonight will try and reverse. Just very briefly, they cover things like making sure the bill is fully compliant with the rule of law, which you might expect that to be the case. It's passed by Parliament, but anyway, that's one of the measures which the peers have put in there. Also checking that Rwanda is a safe country. That's Amendments 2 and 3, and so it goes on. There should be a mechanism which Parliament should be notified on the progress of a treaty and others, and protections for people who have helped to be allies of the UK, who arrive here illegally, should they be sent to Rwanda or to their own country. So there were 10 amendments made to the Rwanda bill by peers. And tonight the government will seek to reverse those. It's a process called ping pong, very boring, but it basically means the House of Commons overrules the House of Lords. It goes back to the Lords probably on Wednesday, and then back to the Commons for another vote. And that can happen 2 or 3 times before the Lords is likely to fold. It's unlikely they're going to ask for, they're going to say, no, we are not going to put up with this. That's only on very rare occasions that happens. So all part of the democratic process. We do know, though, from number 10, that they are now approaching what they call a cohort of people who arrived here illegally, informing them they will be sent back to Rwanda on the first flight. How big is that cohort? We don't know. Labour has said it's only a few hundred, if that. And if it's that small and it's not working, they will axe the Rwanda plan if they become the next government, and they've got their own plan to hire as many as 1,000 people to help with returns and a new deportation unit in the Home Office. So we are getting towards the end of this interminable debate about the Rwanda plan.
Fascinating stuff, I say there, with my fingers crossed, because I can't wait for the day when it's all done and dusted, Christopher, one way or another. But for now, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. You look like you were about to spontaneously combust during some of that, Ben Habib. What's the matter with you?
Well, I mean, the Rwanda plan's not going to work, is it? It can't make its way through Parliament in a manner that makes sense. The idea that the Commons should be directed by the Lords to not break the law when actually it is Parliament that makes the law just is testimony, I think, to how discombobulated our whole legislature and legal system has become in this country. We simply cannot protect our borders. And we've seen this spectacle of the Rwanda plan. I'm completely with you. I've got my fingers crossed for it just to end. Can we stop talking about the Rwanda plan? Even if it comes in, it's not going to act as a deterrent. It's no deterrent. A few hundred people might go, and according to the Financial Times today, the cost of the few hundred that might go would be £3 billion. I mean, we just lost the plot in this country. It's very simple to police our borders. What we have to do is enforce our borders. That's a physical process which takes place at our borders, and the prevention of those who wish to enter our country illegally. It's worked for thousands of years, and we need to rediscover the political will to protect our borders.
I want to come back to you on that, but before I do, I want to bring you in. What's your thoughts on it?
I just think the messaging and the optics of the whole process, where Rishi Sunak was saying it's meant to be a deterrent, I do agree that it's not going to deter anyone because they've seen that it doesn't hold water. And the idea that if you come here, we'll send you to Rwanda, and Rwanda is somehow, quote unquote, a deterrent to people who want to migrate is, first of all, like I've said before, offensive to Rwanda, and second of all, not functional.
Yeah, I mean, we did have this conversation before, I remember it. And it's not that people, like you made a good point last time, that actually people have done their best to try and undermine certain countries. And then when it suits people, actually, they go, look at how wonderful this is. And I know that actually a lot of viewers got in touch about that point. That was and is a good point. But I'll bring you back in, Ben, because this whole notion, like you say, oh, yeah, we just need to protect our borders and all the rest of it. You see, they can't even get a process like this across the line. So all of a sudden, this policing of the border, whether it's by armed forces or whoever it is that's going to push, I'm assuming that you mean push back and turn back these boats.
Absolutely.
But you're not going to get that anywhere near across that land if you can't even get something like this.
But what we are seeing is the extinguishing of the nation-state that is the United Kingdom. A fundamental aspect of being a nation-state is territorial integrity. If you can't enforce your borders, you cease to exist as a country.
Yeah, but you won't get you won't pass the line. If you can't even, if the government today can't even get across the line this situation whereby you'd fly people to a safe country to be cared for and all the rest of it there, then you're not going to get across the line.
No,
you know what we're going to do? We're going to stick the Royal Navy in the middle and start pushing these boats back.
You're not going to get people to do it, but that is the correct, right thing to be doing. That's what border force is meant to do.
But it's not going to happen.
No, But
do you concede it's not going to happen?
I concede it's not going to happen.
Decent policy. It's not going to happen.
I concede it's not going to happen, but I will not stop saying it because it is the common sense, sensible, correct thing to be doing. And these people have lost the plot. And those in charge of this country are deliberately destroying it. And it has to stop.
What do you think to all of this at home? Because, you know, I confess, actually, I'm a little bit bored of going around this exact same circle of the Rwanda situation. It's back and it's forward, it's this amendment, that one's overruled and all the rest of it. It is just getting a little bit pathetic now, isn't it? Even for those people that perhaps support this as a deterrent, this whole ridiculousness, do you ever actually think it is going to cross the line or not? Rishi Sunak, by the way, this Rwanda situation, this is some of the least of his worries because, of course, the economy, he's made that one of his 5 big pledges. He's been speaking out today. I think I can just have a listen to him, what he has to say.
Conservatives are united in wanting to deliver a brighter future for our country, and that's why we're cutting people's taxes, £900 for a typical person in work. We're increasing the state pension by £900 in just a few weeks. We're in the middle of one of the biggest expansions of free childcare that our country's seen. We're getting the number of boats down by 1/3 last year, tackling illegal migration, and today announcing new numbers of apprenticeships, supporting small businesses. These are all the things that matter to people. If we stick with that plan, I can deliver a brighter future for everyone in our country.
Plan, stick with Sunak?
I just think that Rishi Sunak is kind of reaching critical mass now, where it's just a series of lofty rhetoric on the campaign trail, because like when they talk about the first 100 days in an administration is where you can be most effective and effectively leave a legacy by what you make change, how you affect change. At this point in time, what he's talking about only goes to show that in a country that's suffering cost of living crisis, there's problems with the health service, transport, pensions. Where is all the money going to come that you seem to constantly be pledging? You're saying the economy is turning. At the end of the day, what I will always give Rishi Sunak, he's a numbers man and he's excellent at it. But what you read in numbers means nothing to the everyday man. How does he feel it tangibly in his functional existence day to day? He's not feeling it there. So what your lofty rhetoric does is just make you come across with a perception of disingenuity.
Is that fair, Ben?
I think it's entirely fair, with the one exception of your flattering his ability to be numerical. The GDP per capita has gone down every quarter for the last 7 quarters. On a per capita basis, we've been in a recession for longer than any other recession since World War II. Rishi Sunak has not got a grip of the economy. And when he talks about our plan is working, all the policies he's delivering are exactly the same policies that were in place before inflation took off. In fact, a lot of the reason inflation took off was because of the policies he, as Chancellor, promoted. And what they needed to do in 2022, when they ousted Boris, was to have a 180-degree U-turn on the policies by which this country is governed, both economically and in virtually all other respects. And what he's done is more of the same. You don't get your way out of a cost of living crisis by going down inexorably the economically emasculating policy that is net zero, which adds about £60 billion per annum to the Exchequer's output every year. You don't do it by big state intervention, borrowing, taxing and spending. He talks about taxes being cut, but actually taxes are going up when you take into account the inflationary effect of pulling people, you know, the stealth tax of pulling people, fiscal drag, pulling people into higher tax bands. This man has got no vision. His idea of steering the economy is to sit there doing nothing different to what's been done before, practicing all the policies that got us into trouble in the first place, and hoping that the passage of time will get him out of trouble.
Well, Judita, there was rumour at the weekend Penny Mordaunt perhaps would be a good suggestion for the next leader of the Tories. Is that an opinion you can get on board with?
Not exactly, but anything would be better than where they are now. But I think, like the point I made, one of the times I was on your show, was the fact that you're dealing with a situation where Rishi Sunak is not an earned leader. He's a leader of circumstance. And now he finds himself having to carry the bag, part of which he's responsible for post-COVID, but also navigate it to a point where you can hand over. But at the same time, you're creating more problems than you are solving, because unfortunately, how do you fix problems that you didn't create completely on your own, because you don't know how to navigate your way through them? And that's what he's suffering from. And now you have a lack of confidence within your own party, which makes you look incompetent.
Are you still confident in the Tories? I know many of you perhaps will have voted for them. Do you stand by that? Do you look on now and say, yes, it's all going swimmingly or not? Your thoughts on that? And by the way, so many people are getting in touch saying, Michelle, the Navy could police the borders. Tell me then, how would you cross this? How would you get this policy across the line? Because they can't even seem to get the Rwanda one across the line, and that is far less controversial, some would suggest. I'm not knocking your ideas, by the way. Just give me some practical ideas as to how you think you'd get that across the line when it comes to Parliament. Coming up after the break, I want to talk to you about LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods. Do you have one of these things, and did you support it? And get this, as a museum in the UK that's now got Margaret Thatcher and described as a contemporary villain alongside the likes of Osama bin Laden and Adolf Hitler. Really? Your thoughts?
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah,
and
also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... Yeah. I mean, this is stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she
Yes.
isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
Well,
if
no,
you say
they
that,
won't,
will
they
they? Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry until 7 o'clock tonight alongside me. My panel remain. I've got to say, we've just been having a good chat in the break there. I've got Ben Habib alongside me and Judita De Silva. We're just talking. I was just saying, getting a little bit bored and fed up with these circles that we keep going around and around in when it comes to the Rwanda plan. But Judita quite rightly pointed out, well, the opposite of that, Michelle, is basically a dictatorship. And I don't want to live under one of those either. So you know what? We'll carry on talking about the Rwanda plan until it reaches some kind of conclusion. Also, as well, something that caught my eye today. Have you seen this? The Victoria and Albert Museum, they've got this new exhibition, basically. It's alongside like a Punch and Judy type thing. And one of the descriptions here is it's talking about villains. And they're saying that it used to essentially be the devil, but things have evolved. And now what they do is they're talking about using a different type of villain that reflects on popular public figures, which is fine, you might think. But then they start talking about Adolf Hitler and Osama bin Laden. And alongside them, Margaret Thatcher. A villain alongside the likes of Osama bin Laden and Hitler, really?
Now, what I'm going to say is going to sound as if I'm using hyperbole to exemplify my point. But we talked in the last segment, or I did, about the extinguishing of the nation-state that is the United Kingdom. And actually, as trivial as this might seem, this is part of that attack on the United Kingdom. Margaret Thatcher was a democratically elected leader, I think the longest-serving Prime Minister since World War II. She set many records. She broke the grip that the far left had on our economy, liberated society, put aspiration first ahead of dependency. She's someone, whether or not you agree with her legacy, someone who we should regard as a great British historical figure. But they attack her, and in doing it, they're attacking our history. They're attacking those people who we should hold in high regard. And so the board of the VNA, whoever made this decision, I collectively the board, should be sacked.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. They're not at liberty to vilify Margaret Thatcher, their discretion, when they're taking the public purse in order to discharge their obligations.
And by the way, I do have to say that this museum got most of its income, which was more than £67 million, from the taxpayer. Apparently, this is via the Department of Culture. Where are you on this?
First of all, I think that it has been taken out of context, and it's misguided politicization of something that isn't political at all. The exhibit is talking about the evolution of humour, and they're using Punch and Judy and also references to the puppetry show Spitting Image. And they said that the origin of Punch and Judy it's seen very British, but it wasn't. It came from Italy and the Commedia dell'arte. And when it evolved over time, it became a very quintessentially British thing. And in the narrative of it, there's always a villain. It began as the devil, but over the course of time, based on different iterations in different locations, the villain is depicted differently. So in a particular setting, it would have been Adolf Hitler. In another setting, it would have been Osama bin Laden, and in a different setting, it was Margaret Thatcher. Look at the location, the time, the era where it was done, and it would give it context. I'm sure that if you saw Punch and Judy in Ireland at a certain time, it would have British political figures depicted as the villain. So it's not saying that the museum has an opinion on Thatcher and is endorsing that opinion for other people to join them. It's talking about the evolution of humour and the different kinds of depiction there is of it when you pick a classic piece of art like Punch and Judy.
Is that fair?
I don't think it is fair. I think that, we're very good, the British, at laughing at ourselves. You know, it's something we do traditionally extremely well. And Spitting Image was a fantastic show in which everyone was equally belittled. But what they've done here is put Margaret Thatcher alongside Osama bin Laden and Adolf Hitler. And even though it might be done in a semi-humorous way, if that is genuinely the aim, at the very least, and it's not, I'd use the word subliminal, but it's much more than subliminal, they are promoting her as a villain. That's what they're saying. Margaret Thatcher sits here as a villain.
They're not promoting anything. They're depicting the fact of what is, because she was depicted as the villain in Punch and Judy in certain iterations of that puppet show. And
but virtually everyone was in that puppet show.
Yeah, but then what I'm trying to challenge is when you say that people must stick to one perception. You're doing it on the flip side of that coin, saying that there should be only one depiction of Thatcher when it comes to their regard for her and her legacy. But the key is this: what will you have to accept? There are people who do see Thatcher as a villain. When it comes to discussions on poll tax, she was a catalyst for the demise of British manufacturing and social housing. She was against the unification of Germany. She called Nelson Mandela a terrorist. There are people who do not have a very positive opinion of Thatcher or her legacy. She is what she is, but to others, she might not be that same thing.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there is no basis on which she can be put in any comparable fashion next to Adolf Hitler and Osama bin Laden. And a lot of the things that she did, I agree with you. Poll tax wasn't her brightest move, but actually the tax was a sensible suggestion. It's just that the people didn't like it. It was typical Thatcherism. It was promoting what she thought was the right thing to do.
Would you query the validity of, let's say, there was Punch and Judy in South Africa, them depicting Thatcher as the villain?
Well, that's not the nation state of the United.
But then that's the actual context of the exhibit, saying that it is depicted differently in different places, and over time, the villain has been these particular figures that it then actually makes you think, and hence this conversation we're having today, what is perception? How do people see... The Thatcher you speak of is the same Thatcher that when I see her, I think of what she said about Nelson Mandela and the rhetoric she had about the unification of
But he
Germany.
did advocate violence against the state, didn't he?
What was the motivation for what Nelson Mandela did?
Well, whether one man's freedom fighter may be another man's terrorist, and vice versa.
There is no, as far as I'm concerned, there is no debate on apartheid. It is what it was, and it is abhorrent.
Well, I'm not...
And anyone who was pro that purely for the the financial gain of economic oppression of a people on their own land.
To say that Margaret Thatcher was Margaret Thatcher was pro-apartheid because she described Nelson Mandela as a terrorist, they're not the same thing. If someone's advocating violence, illegal violence against the state, that is with a political motive, by definition, that is terrorism.
Since you clearly are on that side, what was the very platform that generated the qualification of Nelson Mandela as a terrorist? What was he doing that qualified him?
He said that violence was justified in the pursuit.
Violence, was justified for what cause? Like, what was the platform?
For the end of apartheid.
Okay, so that's and that does not qualify what he said. That's taking it out of context.
No,
you cannot
Thatcher was... I mean, we're going down into the weeds, but what Thatcher was challenging was the mechanism by which apartheid was itself challenged. And there is no excuse for killing innocent people. None, in my view. None. We have a First Minister in Northern Ireland who will not denounce the IRA. As far as I'm concerned, the IRA is an outright terrorist organisation. And how we have a First Minister in Northern Ireland that won't call them out is absolutely beyond me. And again, it plays testimony to the fact that we're seeing slowly the extinguishing of the United Kingdom. We've seen it now 3 times in this conversation. Firstly, over the inability to police our borders, then the vilification of our national heroes and our past great prime ministers, and now we've got a First Minister in Northern Ireland who wishes to promote who won't denounce the IRA, and we've got a First Minister in Scotland that wants the end of the United Kingdom. This is a really bad place that this country's in at the moment.
Well, I don't think it's going to be getting any better on some of these issues anytime soon, do you? I've got to say, the VNA apparently said that they're always open to feedback from visitors, and apparently what they're going to do is review the relevant label text and update the wording if necessary. So time will tell what, if anything, they do about that. I want to talk to you, though, about LTN, so-called low-traffic neighbourhoods. Of course, these things are popping up all over the place now. Have you got one where you live? Now, government guidelines basically saying that if there's not proper public support for this, then they shouldn't be going ahead. Ben Habib?
Well, they're not talking about public support for this, are they, actually? What they're saying, Michelle, is that local communities need to vote against their own LTNs in order for them to be removed, or that there needs to be popular support for LTNs in a community for them to be imposed. And that is very different to talking about general public support. And what the government is doing here, from what I can see, is using NIMBYism in order to promote LTNs. Because, of course, if you have a house on a street, you want that street as quiet as you possibly can get it. So there will be local support for LTNs, absolutely. But is that the right policy for London or other cities? I don't think so. And I think we need a much bigger debate on LTNs, which are being imposed on us by radical people like Sadiq Khan, who have some kind of agenda against the car and against people using cars. A sort of war on the car is taking place, and we need a proper discussion about it.
Jadita?
Well, I think it's a triumph, whichever way you look at it, for democracy, because it is such a universally abhorred policy that if you're going to say that, oh, this is them just posturing by saying we're listening to the people to affect how it's going to be governed and how it's going to be policed, that should make the government look good. Fine. But what it is reactionary to the opinion of the people. British people do not like this. By and large, they don't.
LTNs.
LTNs.
I completely agree.
And it affects them. And when you think about even the emergency services, it is almost fatal in certain circumstances.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to say that we need to be on board to make it work, that's a good thing. That is a democratic position.
But they're not invoking the general populace's view. They're going to local communities and saying, they're going to councils and saying, you've got to get the support of your local community for a local LTN. So if you live on that street, you're going to be a NIMBY, aren't you? That's the way they're promoting their agenda. They're stepping round the democratic voice. They're not using democracy to get it across.
When they have these consultations, one of the things that's coming out is the low amount of engagement. A lot of people are not engaging with some of these consultations because often people are saying that, actually, I don't feel like my view is going to be listened to anyway.
And this is something that would actually be a catalyst to turn that around, because when you feel that our opinion collectively has changed the way they're going around executing policy, you're going to engage more. That's why they say, like, thinking about local government, that when you're going to vote, that it's really important. The minutiae of politics, when you come to the grand scheme of things, is very effective, because a lot of people have this apathy that I'm not going to really affect change and it's not going to help me in any way, so I'm going to sit back and let the chips fall where they may. When you feel that within the minutiae, as you say, of your own community or your local council, I have an effect, you engage. And that snowballs into a bigger participation and a bigger engagement when it comes to looking at things across the board.
Does it? How engaged are you with matters? And when you are engaged, do you feel actually your view counts and that people listen to you? Jill in Barnsley, she says, Michelle, can I just chip in this Margaret Thatcher conversation? If Margaret Thatcher was a Prime Minister today, Jill is absolutely certain that we wouldn't be in much of the mess that we currently are in. And many people have been emailing in as well, saying about this whole situation within the Channel and people crossing the Channel like that. Lots of you are suggesting, actually, if Margaret Thatcher was still around, none of it would still be happening, would it? How are you so sure about that? And how do you think Margaret Thatcher would have fared as well with the advent of social media, every single person scrutinising every single inch of what everyone does? Would it have made a difference to her or not? Your thoughts on that, I'll bring you into the conversation after the break. Lots coming up. I want to talk to you about ESG. Do you know what that is? You will in a couple of minutes. If you don't already, I'll see you in 2.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Rain spreads east during the next 24 hours, breezy along with that rain, but it does turn drier and brighter later on Tuesday. Weather fronts responsible attached to this area of low pressure anchored off the west of Scotland overnight, and those weather fronts will bring outbreaks of persistent rain to the north and the west initially before transferring east. The rain does turn more showery. It tends to fragment through the night, but still some of those showers will be quite heavy, particularly in the north and the west. Not much rain reaching the southeast at all. In fact, some clear spells remain here, but with the cloud and the increased breeze, gales for the far northwest. Well, it is going to be a mild start to Tuesday, albeit a cloudy and a showery run. Quite a lot of showers, I think, around during Tuesday morning. Breaking up into the afternoon to hit and miss downpours, most likely northern and central England seeing those downpours with some brightness either way, and actually feeling warm in any sunny spells, 17 or 18 Celsius, but more rain is on the way, spreading up from the southwest on Tuesday night and into Wednesday, reaching the Grampians and persisting through much of the day across eastern and northern England, Wales and the Midlands, before eventually turning back to showers. Further outbreaks of rain to come on Thursday, particularly towards the northwest, where it will be windy and cool, and then showers to come on Friday.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debate, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hi Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock, alongside the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and the broadcast journalist Judita De Silva. Welcome back, everybody. I've got to say, there's quite a lot of love for Margaret Thatcher. So many people absolutely adamant that if she was here and in charge of this country, I said it before the break, that we wouldn't have half the mess that we have at the moment. Your challenge to you, though, continues. If social media was around like it is now, do you think that would influence things with her or not? Your thoughts on that? This story caught my eye. Lloyds Bank, right, they own the insurance company Scottish Widows. They have now issued some kind of suggested guidance about which word to try and avoid upsetting people or perhaps be as inclusive as possibly can be. One of these words is widows, which really caught my eye because of the amount of stupidity. If you own a brand literally called Scottish Widows, you can't then be saying that the word widows is triggering and offensive. Anyway, because it is so ludicrous, I need to move over from that part because I want to talk about the broader issue. So many organisations, they have what they call ESG. I'm going to bring a graphic up on the screen in case you're not familiar with what this is. But it's a sense of kind of government, and I would say it's almost like a spine. It underpins so much of what business does today. It stands for environmental, social and governance. And it's around things like how does a business perform when it comes to their environmental impact? How diverse are their employees? How diverse is their board? And so on and so forth. Do you think ESG is a force for good and much needed within business or not, Ben?
It is a force. We've talked about now 3 times, and I'm going to talk about it again. The extinguishing of the nation-state that is the United Kingdom.
There's a theme here, I can tell everyone.
And that is partly what ESG is delivering. It is the shutting down of the debate that you so correctly advocated for earlier, general democratic debate. It's the shutting down the debate about whether or not net zero is the right policy, first of all, so they can force businesses to adopt net zero through this regulatory requirement. And it is the imposition of prejudice within business, and it's not just business, by the way, it's government institutions, the armed forces, the police force, educational establishments, all of it requiring the promotion of ethnic and other minorities over and above, if necessary, to the detriment of the majority. It is the introduction of systemic institutionalised prejudice in the United Kingdom, which is going to damage dreadfully our economy, but also our culture, our cohesion as a society, and it's undermining, again, coming back to it, the nation-state that is the United Kingdom. ESG has to be ditched.
Strong words. Judita, do you agree with him?
I don't agree, because I think that with ESG, when you have them, what you're having an increase in is specialists in ESG being introduced into companies to kind of imbricate it into how the company functions. If you're moving in a direction of making your company's functionality be optimized in a way that is inclusive of anyone from any background who has the qualifications to occupy that position, that is a good thing. It is not when you think of affirmative action in America, the whole point was that students actually have the capability, but based on their origin and background, they do not have a robust enough platform to stand on to even compete. What you're doing is leveling the playing field. So look at everyone and pick the person with the qualifications, not somebody who has the deck stacked in their favour. ESG is something that, if you're saying you're moving towards net zero is a good thing, because when you think of generations that are going to come after, what are they going to inherit?
Why is net zero a good thing?
If you think the preservation of the climate is not...
but net zero isn't equivalent to the preservation of the climate or the protection of...
No,
net zero is a government policy which requires the United Kingdom to aim for zero carbon emissions by 2050. That is quite different to wishing to protect the environment, which all of us wish to do. Net zero is...
You think that
net zero is the government's...
function of that?
Well, it's an entirely arbitrary policy chosen by the government to deliver what it says is the right way to deal with climate change. But we're not allowed to have a debate on it. We're told that by 2050, if we haven't got the United Kingdom's carbon emissions down to zero, and there are a number of steps that we have to achieve on the way, the climate of this planet is going to burn up and we're all going to die. First of all, I challenge that assumption that 2050 is this magic date. Secondly, I challenge robustly that the measures being taken will actually get us to net zero by 2050. I don't think the technology exists to get us there without. I don't think we can survive as an economy in order to get to the position that they wish to get to. And what you don't do is save the planet by destroying the economy. We will all just die off if we don't have a viable economy. It's, as I mentioned at the beginning of this programme, it's costing us 60 billion minimum per annum for delivering net zero. It is not synonymous with wishing to conserve the environment or protect the planet. That is the government's idea of what the right thing to do is, and we should be at liberty to challenge it.
Well, first of all, I would say you're being negatively hyperbolic, because the idea of having organizations be accountable and be answerable, it's going to be difficult and it's going to be very uncomfortable, but it's moving in the right direction, however it makes you feel.
It's destroying our economy.
It isn't destroying the economy.
It is.
It's going through a teething process that's going to be difficult, but you're moving in the right direction. And the fact is that at the end of the day, the UK doesn't function in isolation. Countries around the world are employing the same kinds of policies because everybody recognises that there's something that needs to be done and needs to be done soon before you get to, as you've said, hothouse Earth, which is the end, quote-unquote, end of the world. If you feel that the way it's going now, which the rest of the world is on board with, and everyone is doing it to varying degrees within their capacity, should not be done, do we sit back and let things carry on as they are?
Well, the United Kingdom is actually incredibly good as far as it comes to carbon emissions. Yet, we are adopting a policy in the teeth of a cost of living crisis, which burdens the working class and middle classes much more than it burdens the upper class, who can absolutely, the wealthy can go through all these net zero policies with ease. But it's the working and middle classes who pick up the burden. It's the ULEZ charge, the congestion charge, the green taxes on your fuel bill, VAT on your fuel bill, 48%
Ironically,
addition.
I completely agree with that the time it's being done is extremely difficult and puts excessive strain on, but the bastardizing of the actual policy itself is what I disagree with. So it is the right thing to do, but doing it now is just even harder than it would be in normal circumstances.
Do you know what? I was going to, after my break, talk about shoplifting, but I'm not. I'm going to stick with ESG for a bit, because so many of you are getting in touch with this, and there's so much more to be said. Anthony says, please, can you give it its right name? He says, I call ESG Marxist communism. That is coming through from a lot of people. We've just touched on the environmental side of it. One of the sides that I want to explore after the break is the diversity element that comes up through and through time and time again when it comes to organisations. Is this a good thing or not? I'll see you in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, I'm sure you have seen this video that went viral this week, and if you haven't, well, I think you're going to enjoy it. This is a firefighter leaning on a fence whilst watching a trapped driving instructor's car sink in 4 feet of floodwater. Looks very comfortable there, doesn't he? Just leaning against the fence.
Just chilling, just relaxing. Yeah, there were there were in fact 2 Essex fire and rescue crews, an ambulance and a police car parked near the sinking vehicle, but they wouldn't enter the water because they had to wait for specialist crews who were trained for the water depth.
Well, 2 people who weren't going to sit back and watch were these 2, Jack and Danielle Price, who took it upon themselves to rescue the submerged driver. And Danielle joins us now. Very good morning to you, Danielle. And you are a hero, an absolute hero. What happened in this video? Make sense of it for us.
So we were filming in the area for our YouTube channel, and we've seen the fire brigade come through. I was actually out at 5 o'clock in the morning with my husband, Jamie. We know it always happens there, as you can see, and it was clear. We've seen the fire brigade come through, we've followed them, and they're just standing around as if nothing's happened. In the clip, it says he's fine, he's on his phone, and then sort of walked away. But what they failed to realise is when my partner actually opened the door, as you can hear, he's on the phone to the emergency crew in panic, thinking he's going to sink. So we could not just sit there and watch. He's absolutely terrified.
Yeah, poor bloke. Well done you. Do you reckon this is health and safety gone mad?
It is, because although I do sympathise with them, they are so red-taped, but surely sort of common sense has to kick in as open the door.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. John, my viewer, says, come on, Michelle, read out some more viewers' emails. I'm working my butt off trying to get you to read mine out. John, this is very embarrassing to admit, but I've managed to lock myself out of my screen that I normally bring all of you guys in. So I'm bringing as many as you view in as I can. But tonight I am, by my own stupidity, a little bit restricted. Ben Habib, Judita De Silva remain alongside me. We were just talking about ESG. So many people getting in touch saying it's basically some form of kind of cultural Marxism. We've just been touching upon the environmental side of it, but another aspect of this, a very key core tenet of it, is the diversity angle, where so many companies, they're desperately trying to tick diversity quotas, opinions, and so on. Is this a good thing for business or not, Ben?
No, I think it's awful for business. I run a business which is regulated by the FCA. We're listed on the stock market, and we're obliged to, comply with their regulations. And we have to produce endless reports on the composition of our board, the gender balance that we've got on our board, the gender balance we've got on the investments we make on behalf of funds, the ethnic mix, and I count myself, I can tick that box because I'm half Pakistani by origin. I'm entirely British, but half Pakistani, so I can tick that box. But what we're doing is dumbing down the economy, ejecting meritocracy, and choosing people based on the colour of their skin and other minority determinants over and above what we should be doing, which is choosing people purely on whether they're the best for that job. If we want a prosperous economy, the way you get that is by having really prosperous companies, businesses, and so on. And you do that by ensuring that everyone is treated equally. So everyone has an equal opportunity, but only the best get the job for which they're best at.
So equal opportunity, but not necessarily manufactured equal outcomes.
Absolutely.
Is that fair, Judita?
I agree with certain points that you've made, where I do believe a meritocracy is the way any optimized society should function. But at the same time, what you have to recognize is there are certain vast swathes of people, based on ethnicity and cultural heritage and where they come from, don't even get in the room. What this is designed to do is engineer things. I agree, it is engineering. Engineer things to create a level playing field. Then the meritocracy kicks in.
But it's not doing that, Judita.
It depends on how you execute, because I say every company has the autonomy to execute policy the way they see fit, but you have to be seen to be engaging with that policy. The policy exists because it's something that has been ignored up until now. And I'm like, friends, family are testament to that, where there, for instance, I was in an Uber taxi where my driver is a doctor in Bulgaria. But here he has to drive an Uber because they say they don't recognize his qualifications. But he was a high-earning doctor, but he had to move because his wife wants to study. For him to get into that niveau of societal function, he needs something to kind of give him a boost. And this is the kind of thing that would do that, because once you hear him speak, once he actually shows you the qualifications and the actual practical application of them, you know he's good enough.
But that sounds a bit strange to me. So if someone's got medical qualifications in a different country, and I respect that, surely that you've got to have some level of standard in this country which says, actually, this is the thing we expect, this is the thing we expect, and this is the thing we expect.
As he said, he didn't even get that opportunity, because once they said said that your qualifications are from a medical school in Bulgaria, he can't get in. And he can't, at his age, in his late 40s, go back to medical school to re-qualify in the UK. But he's supporting his wife, who is going to university here.
But it's
so how do you give him an opportunity to function at the level he is capable of
But it's a
functioning?
very dangerous slope, and we've gone down it far too far, where you choose people based on the colour of their skin. And that's what we're doing. You know, the armed forces spent £2 million last year trying to get ethnic minorities to fly jets because they didn't want white jet fighter pilots. As far as I'm concerned, what matters is the defence of the United Kingdom, and I want the best fighter pilots I don't care what colour they are. They could be any colour. I couldn't care less. And that's the message I want to drive home, is that people have to be treated equally. Even Martin Luther King said it. He said we should not be judged by the colour of our skin, but by the contents of our character. And ESG and the S in it, the DEI policy, is actually championing colour and ethnicity.
It isn't championing colour. I think that is a reductive way of describing it, which again triggers people into seeing it as a race thing. It's about origin and different countries that you come from. You might happen to look that way, but it's about coming from countries other than Britain. That is what it's engineered to police.
What, to promote foreign people in the workplace over British citizens?
No. Promote the opportunity to hire the best person for the job and the possibility that the best person might not be the person who was born in Britain.
That's not how it's being implemented.
Down to each organisation's ability to police itself.
See, and I can tell you now, this is a conversation. I could have carried that on. Just this one conversation, because I think it is so fundamental to so much of what's going on, this whole ESG scenario. But I will have to continue that conversation for another day, and continue it I will. So much of you guys are getting in touch with me tonight. I'm so sorry that I've not been able to read out as many emails as I would have liked. I blame nothing but my own fat fingers for that, so apologies. Jadita, thank you very much for your company tonight. And Ben Habib, thank you for yours too. So I will continue that conversation. So anyone out there that's got strong opinions on ESG, and I can see so many of you saying that you do, tell me why, and tell me whether or not you think it has been a force for good or not. Anyway, that's all I've got time for tonight. Up next is Farage, hosted tonight by Camilla Tominey, so don't go anywhere, but I will see you tomorrow night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Rain spreads east during the next 24 hours, breezy along with that rain, but it does turn drier and brighter later on Tuesday. Weather fronts responsible attached to this area of low pressure anchored off the west of Scotland overnight, and those weather fronts will bring outbreaks of persistent rain to the north and the west initially before transferring east. The rain does turn more showery. It tends to fragment through the night, but still some of those showers will be quite heavy, particularly in the north and the west. Not much rain reaching the southeast at all. In fact, some clear spells remain here, but with the cloud and the increased breeze, gales for the far northwest. Well, it is going to be a mild start to Tuesday, albeit a cloudy and a showery run. Quite a lot of showers, I think, around during Tuesday morning. Breaking up into the afternoon to hit and miss downpours, most likely northern and central England seeing those downpours with some brightness either way, and actually feeling warm in any sunny spells, 17 or 18 Celsius, but more rain is on the way, spreading up from the southwest on Tuesday night and into Wednesday, reaching the Grampians and persisting through much of the day across eastern and northern England, Wales and the Midlands, before eventually turning back to showers. Further outbreaks of rain to come on Thursday, particularly towards the northwest, where it will be windy and cool, and then showers to come on Friday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still time to win our giveaway packed with seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash to make your bank account bloom. Plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For another chance to win the voucher,